morning. Welcome to Joy in Our Town. I'm your host, Lorene Tanaka, and it seems that every year hurricane season puts us on the alert. So being informed can be very, very helpful, and that's why we have with us here today Mike Canton. And Mike is the Warning Coordination Meteorologist with NOAA and National Weather Service.
You got it.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
God, I have a million questions for you, but we don't have time for all that, so let's go to the 500,000.
Sure, there you go. All right, let's go.
So give us an update. What's happening around Hawaii in reference to hurricane season, and what else can we maybe expect? Or
Sure, yeah, so we're getting close to the start of the season. Our official season around Hawaii and the Central Pacific runs from June 1st through November 30th, so we're less
right
than a month
there.
away.
Okay.
So now is the time to be making sure that you're getting your plans together, preparing, get all your kits together and all of those things. So it's kind of the crunch time before things get started. Now, it's not a guarantee that we're going to get a storm right when the season starts. In fact, in the last 40 plus years, we've seen a tropical cyclone or a hurricane somewhere in the Central Pacific every month of the year except for February and May. So they can happen at any time, but the peak of our season generally is kind of the summer months, July through September.
Okay. All right, so get prepared now. Let's back up a little. Sometimes I hear the terminology tropical cyclone. Is a tropical cyclone and a hurricane two different animals?
They're actually the same animal. So the way that we describe it, we say tropical cyclone as a generic term for tropical type storms.
Okay.
Then based upon the winds associated with that system, we give it a different name. So the strongest systems that have 74 mile per hour winds or higher are hurricanes.
Okay.
And then from 39 to 73 mile per hour winds is a tropical storm, and then less than that is a tropical depression. So a tropical cyclone for us is just a generic term for storms that form in the tropics, and then depending on how strong they are, we give it a different name.
Oh, got it. Okay, I always thought there were two different things. But sometimes you were also we were talking a little bit off camera about how sometimes across the country there are different names. Like here in Hawaii, we are very familiar with hurricanes, unfortunately, or the terminology hurricane. But in other parts of the country, it's also called?
It's a little bit different. So if you go west of the date line in the Pacific, they're actually called typhoons.
Okay.
Typhoons and super typhoons. So there's no depressions or storms or hurricanes. They're all typhoon or super typhoon.
Okay.
If you go south of the equator, they're actually called tropical cyclones.
Oh.
So instead of calling it a hurricane, they call it a tropical cyclone. So if you remember last year, most recently, was Tropical Cyclone Evan at the island of Samoa.
Yes.
And that's what they call it down there. They call it a tropical cyclone. So we would have called that a hurricane or a major hurricane.
Okay. See, good to know, because if we're traveling, then we need to know what the different terminologies are. But regardless, an emergency is an emergency.
Absolutely.
Pay attention to the warnings and everything that's out there.
Yes.
What are some of the things that you at NOAA look for? What are some symptoms, or if you will, that start happening out there in the atmosphere that causes you to start alerting us?
Sure. Well, we start to look for this time of year, starting to warm up, right? The trade winds tend to get more consistent.
Yes.
So what happens is as that warmth starts taking place in the atmosphere, the ocean starts to warm as well. It's a little more pleasant. You don't get that chill when you jump in the water. It gets a little warmer. Tropical cyclones or hurricanes, they like warm water. Okay, so that's one of the first ingredients. As we see things starting to warm here in the Central Pacific and in the Eastern Pacific, more towards Central America and Mexico, we start to see that warming, and then the conditions are starting to ripen for tropical cyclone development. So we watch those areas very closely. So that tends to happen as we get into these summertime months as it warms up, and as our high pressure to our northeast strengthens and the trades start to settle in. We haven't seen it the last month or so.
I know.
We'd like to get in the back, but once it starts to settle in here over the next few weeks, that is another sign that the atmosphere is becoming more tranquil and capable of sustaining tropical cyclones. So a hurricane, or a tropical cyclone, they don't keep going back and forth.
I know, it's one and the same.
I'm using
hurricane.
So a hurricane doesn't like to interact with other weather systems. So when we have our ridge of high pressure and our weather is pleasant, there's not much else going on. There's no fronts, there's no other lows. So that hurricane that forms says, hey, I can take all the energy for myself. And so we start to see those signals in the atmosphere, and we know that if a storm forms, it can just run as much as it wants. It doesn't have to share anything, and it'll be a strong system.
Oh, okay. So as you're watching the radar and you're watching, I guess, some buoy readings, is that all part of that?
Yep,
that
satellites
happens?
as well.
Satellites. Is there one thing that just all of a sudden puts up a red flag for you?
First thing we look for that really catches our attention, we'll see clusters of thunderstorms in various areas, but what we'll start to see is these clusters of thunderstorms forming around a low-level circulation. So they'll start to turn, so we know a low is starting to form, and then watching that convection start to really blossom. Okay, so we'll be watching on satellite, and all of a sudden the clouds are getting very tall, getting very invigorated, lots of energy in there, and we know that there's not only is there a circulation, but there's lots of energy surrounding that circulation. And that's usually the first few steps to saying, all right, we're going to get ourselves a tropical cyclone.
Which is really good, because then you get on the alert with us and you let us know that we see the warnings coming across the TV screens or on the radio stations, and we can get prepared.
Yeah, so we'll start watching systems while they're far to our east over the eastern Pacific Ocean. We officially start forecasting from 140 west.
Okay.
It's about 1,000 miles to our east of Hawaii, and then all the way to the date line. But we'll be watching systems that form east of there. The National Hurricane Center in Miami actually does the forecast. We'll be watching there, and we'll be informing the public via various messages. We'll be talking with local media as well, saying, okay, the system's out there, and it's moving our way. We've got to keep an eye on it. Once it crosses into our area, we make the official forecast. Good. And then we'll also be working very closely with not only the media, but with civil defense and other emergency management agencies, letting them know when the system may be approaching and what type of impacts we're going to see. So, and all that'll be translated to the public as well. You'll see a lot of that information.
And we thank you for that, because that helps to save lives.
You're welcome. That's why we're here.
And you folks are staffed 24/7.
Yes, we're there 24/7, and if a tropical cyclone forms, moves into our area, we beef up the staffing as well. So we have extra people on there. Folks like myself will be on there 24 hours. We'll be working 12-hour shifts to be working and getting the information out. So it's very important. That's what our role is. That's why we're here. That's our mission with the National Weather Service, is to protect the lives and property of U.S. citizens and the people of Hawaii. So that's why we're here. That's what we do.
Thank goodness for that. Now, when we're looking at different warning, well, let's talk about what are the two, I guess, major emergencies that we normally see. One would be hurricane, the other one would be tsunami.
Tsunami, yes.
Okay.
And then a third one would be earthquakes as well.
Oh,
so mainly for the Big
right,
Island, they tend to see more of the seismic activity there, but we know we have a history of it all across the state, earthquakes, but tsunamis and hurricanes are the big ones. And hurricanes, we may have a couple of days, 3-4 days of notice of one approaching. Tsunamis can happen at a moment's notice. You may have a couple hours, or you may have minutes if it's a local tsunami as well.
True.
And then earthquakes, they just happen whenever, right? There's really no way to tell.
So being that with tsunamis, maybe part of the preparedness, would it be to know where you live? Are you in a tsunami inundation zone?
Yes. Yeah, and that's for tsunamis and hurricanes as well.
Hurricanes too.
You've heard of the tsunami inundation zones that are around the islands, right? They've been mapped out and studied. They'll be changing as events happen, and we can kind of adjust the line. Those actually apply to hurricanes as well. If you live in that evacuation zone, that's an area that we tend to think that storm surge from a hurricane would be stronger and cause more damage. So for hurricanes, you've got to be thinking as well, if I'm in those inundation zones, I'm in the zone where storm surge and these large waves can affect us there. So we need to be prepared. You need to be prepared to be able to leave at a moment's notice. And we've talked about preparedness, getting things prepared ahead of time. So we're prepared, we won't fear, right? So we're prepared, and so if a disaster comes, if it's a couple days out, or if it happens, a local tsunami, and you got just minutes, you can just grab what you need and get out and get to where you need to be for safety. But you want to prepare ahead of time so you're not scrambling at the last minute.
Exactly. Now let's talk about that prepared. Sure. What do we need to do to be prepared? Do we need to put together a kit, a box? I mean, what do we need to do?
Sure, very good questions. There's a couple different ways to look at it. If you're in one of those zones where you're going to have to leave immediately, you may get an evacuation notice and you need to go, you want to be able to have something that you can grab and go. Okay?
That quickly.
Yes, you want to be able to say at a moment's notice, grab your kit, maybe you have it in a backpack, whatever the case may be, you're able to go. What you have in that backpack is stuff that can sustain you for 2, maybe 3, 4 days.
Okay.
So basic food items in there that will last long.
Okay.
Flashlights, batteries, a battery-powered radio, maybe a blanket.
Okay.
There's some toiletry items, things that you can take with you to a shelter wherever you need to go and be able to sustain yourself for a few days as things settle out. If you're outside of that zone, and then you don't necessarily need to have a kit to grab and go. Okay. You can have one. It's always not a bad thing. I'm not saying not get one.
Right.
But if you're not going to have to evacuate potentially, you can stockpile items where you are at home. Okay. So you want to have about 5 to 7 days worth of food and water. Okay. That's a lot of water. Okay.
Yes.
So that's a gallon per person per day, basically, is the idea. So if you're talking, you get a family of 6. That's 6 gallons per day for 7
Wow.
days, 42
Okay.
gallons of water, right? So you do the best you can. You want to have non-perishable food items.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have all those things like the radios, the flashlights,
Mm-hmm.
the batteries. You want to have important documents, right? So if you have the documents that define you, whether it's social security cards or
Oh,
else, make
ID.
copies of them, all
Okay.
your ID stuff, and keep them in a watertight container.
Okay.
Plastic bag, whatever the case may be, that you can either take with you, or if the house gets, where you are gets flooded, they'll be safe. And information, anything
Good
that
idea.
kind of defines you. Medications is another thing as well.
That's
if
right.
you have important medications that you'll need for sustain your life, right? If maybe it's heart medication, whatever
Mm-hmm.
it is, you want to have a little bit of extra of that as well. Maybe up to about 10 days worth.
Okay.
When a storm hits and the hurricane takes out all the power,
We're cut off.
roads are closed. Depending where you live, you may be cut off. If you're up on the windward side, the North Shore, far Waianae side of the island of Oahu,
Right,
particularly, and other neighbor islands, any of the areas that are more isolated, you could be cut off for days.
Okay.
If not weeks, potentially.
Okay.
A lot of the resources will be pre-positioned around the islands, but a majority of them will be where the infrastructure is, and then they'll kind of work out from there. So
Okay.
you could be on your own for a while. So
Okay.
you can't get to a pharmacy, you can't get to a store. You need to
Right.
have what you need with you when things happen.
Now, I want to say on that list, put on there a manual can opener.
Yeah, very good idea. Yes.
We get so used to using all the electric things
Yeah.
that we don't think about it, and then all of a sudden you've got canned goods in your backpack thinking, how are we going to open
You're
this?
like, what do I do, right? You can't be Popeye and squeeze it, right? You need one of those things to cut it. Good
Now,
idea.
okay, we're thinking of people. We also have to consider our pets.
Yes.
And so have a pet carrier ready where, pet can go right in and you're out the door. And
Yep, you take care of your loved ones. That includes your pets, right? So
Yeah.
have something for them. So if you're going to be staying, get extra food, whatever the supplies, somewhere to a kit, like you said, to take them out. If you're going to plan on going to a shelter, there's going to be shelters that are opening
Yes.
for a hurricane,
Yes.
potentially for tsunami, but most of the time it'll be for a hurricane. You need to check ahead of time with the shelter. Does the shelter allow pets?
Pet
Because
friendly,
not
right.
all pet shelters allow pets.
True,
And
true.
realize if you go to a shelter, the only thing that's going to be there for you is what you bring with you.
So you'll have a
So
space on the floor. That's
you
it.
can have a space on the floor, so if you want something there, you need to bring it with you. And you only have so much space, so you can't bring everything. Don't
right.
grab the kitchen sink,
Right,
and the
right, right,
refrigerator.
right.
You're not going to have room
Just
for it.
exactly what you need to live.
Exactly, but you're not going to have the facilities that you did.
Now, we have about 1 minute, but I want you to touch on something that's really important out there. We rush to the stores when we hear the warnings. We stock up and buy everything that we can possibly carry with us. What happens after the emergency?
What we should be doing, if we should be prepared ahead of time, so we're not rushing to the
Okay.
store. If we are forced because of circumstances, we got to get to the store, make sure you keep some of those items. It's all too common that people will get items ahead of a storm, and then right after the storm, return everything. It's best to
Wow.
hold on to these things, especially the ones that you need, and use them for a future emergency. It helps you stay prepared. But far too many people actually return the items directly afterwards. So it's just as busy in the store after a storm as it is
So
before the
keep
storm.
it so you don't have to re-prepare.
Absolutely. Stay
Well,
prepared
that
once
was-
and carry through.
That was very, very good, and we want the viewers to really heed what you're saying here.
so.
It's really important. Going into our second half, let's talk about ocean safety because we're hearing too many news stories of people getting hurt out there. They're not aware of the water conditions or whatever the case is, and that could be for the residents and Kama'ainas as well as visitors. What is the one thing that we should know about ocean safety?
It's ocean safety is so important in Hawaii. Water-related accidents, high surf especially, is the #1 weather-related killer in the entire Pacific, including Hawaii. So water kills more people here than just about anything else as far as a natural hazard goes.
Wow.
So you need to realize that it may look beautiful, it's beautiful color, the water feels nice, there's wildlife, enjoyable scenes, but it can be deadly. And to realize that you need to know before you go.
Okay.
And that goes for a lot of things, but when ocean safety in particular, you need to know what the conditions are going to be like before you go. We've got surf
okay.
reports, we have weather reports, we've got information. You need to know what it's going to be like when you get there so you don't get yourself into hazardous conditions.
Now there's various ways that we can know. Are there apps that we can look at or something online or what are we looking at?
There's lots of different there's private companies that do it. There's surf lines. There's all these companies
Okay.
that will share this information.
Okay.
You also through our website at weather.gov/Hawaii.
Good.
There's also, if you look up Hawaii Ocean Safety,
Okay.
look it up on the internet. There's actually a specific page that's been put together by the University of Hawaii and Oahu Ocean Safety.
Oh, good.
And what they do is they actually take beach by beach. You can click on the beach and see what the conditions are going to be like today. and what the hazard level is. So it's really important to check those things out. And you can see that if it's a day where there's a big northwest swell, the North Shore is rocking, all the surfers are out there, the crowds are out watching the waves, there'd be much better beaches to go to, say, on the South Shore, where the water will be calm. So if you're going to be snorkeling or swimming, you don't want to go up where there's big waves. You want to go down where it's much more calm. So check those sources first, and then know where to go.
Okay, so even for our residents here, we may think, oh, I've lived here all my life, I'm cool, the beaches are good, I know what it's all about. We still should check. And if there's a lifeguard at the beach, what should we do then?
You should, if you have any question about the situation. So if you go there and you get that gut feeling that says, hey, I'm not sure about these conditions, always talk to a lifeguard. If it's a hazardous condition out there, the lifeguard will generally be walking the beach or riding their ATV around and telling people, hey, there's rip currents out there, there's large waves, you need to be careful, okay, watch out for the coral, things like that. They'll always be
that's
out there.
what it is, the things that we cannot see. You know, like you said, we get to the beach and we're like, oh, look at that blue water, I just want to dive in, but you don't realize there's a coral head right there.
Right, and the currents. And so a lot of times, especially local folks, we kind of know the spots, we've been there a lot of times, so we may know where some of the hazards are, but we may not fully understand it. We may be rushing around and not thinking.
Well, currents change daily, or hour to hour, if you will. But
absolutely,
right, so you don't.
Yes, especially if there's been some swell. If there's been waves, sandbars will move, which will adjust where the currents go. So you need to be prepared for those types of changes.
Wow. Now, tell us, share with us about what's happening with kayakers, jet skiers, people that are out there enjoying the ocean sports.
Yeah, there's a lot more people out there. You get stand-up paddle boards, you get one-man, two-man canoes, you get outrigger canoes, you've got flotation devices, jet skis, all these things.
There's a lot of traffic out there now.
There's a lot of traffic, so you got to be realized that there may be swimmers out there. You got to watch certain designated areas, areas where you should be or shouldn't be launching your watercraft into the water. Okay, swimming areas, and talk to lifeguards about that.
Oh, there are designated areas where you have to launch
from?
Some
locations, yes, they define those. So as you get to the beach and you're not aware of these things, talk to a lifeguard, see where's a safe place to go. Another important thing is, as we get into the summer months, especially, the trade winds get consistent. Now, if you're thinking the south shores of the islands, these trade winds are blowing offshore.
Yes.
And so if you go out there, you get into trouble, you're going to be blown out into the open ocean. Yeah, so that there's time after time, people get into trouble and they get blown out. So if you're going out, if you're on a stand-up, maybe a good idea, maybe have a watertight bag and bring your cell phone with you if you get into trouble, right? Something to think about. Nobody does, I mean, very few people do that.
Right.
But it's something to be thinking about. If you have a watercraft, a canoe, or a boat, you want to have a radio with you if you can. So these are the little things that we don't usually think about because we're just getting out there and jumping in the water.
Having fun.
And it may seem inconvenient to do it, but if you get into trouble and the trades are blowing you offshore, that may be your only lifeline.
And because when emergency rescue is looking for you, you're just a tiny, tiny, minute spot in the ocean, and they can't necessarily see you. You think, well, I have my big yellow kayak, right? They can see me, but you can't,
You can't always do it. And sometimes most people get into trouble where they fall out of their, either fall off their stand-up or fall out of the canoe, and then the canoe gets blown away from them, and they can't catch up with it. So do you paddle after your canoe as it goes out to sea, or you head back in? So people are stuck in these situations, and we want to be very careful. And
so if they're bringing a cell phone in a watertight, should they be wearing it like on their body? It should be like somewhere.
Yes, somewhere on them that they can have access to it quickly. Yep.
Oh.
Absolutely. If you're in a kayak and you've got one of those watertight bags, you can put it in there so you could pull it out and use it.
But if you get separated from the kayak.
Yeah. So maybe better to have it on you. Absolutely.
Maybe, huh?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Now, what's happening with some of the surf that we're, I guess, looking at for the winter time? Because it seems like the surf gets really big during the winter months. Is there a certain month that kind of starts to swell a little bit where we should be more concerned?
Yeah, well, right now we're kind of
aware.
We're in a kind of a transition period now. So during the winter months, we tend to see big, large north to northwest swells that come rolling in out of these big storm systems up in the Gulf of Alaska and the North Pacific. Now we're transitioning to storms that are going to be less active to the north, but more active to the south. So east of Australia and New Zealand, there's areas where if you get big lows there, they channel south swells. And these south swells take a little bit longer to get to us. And so by the time they get here, they're not quite as tall. They're a little more spaced out, but they can still break very large on the reef. So we start to transition into, instead of the south shores where most people go swimming, nice and calm, they can be very active with strong currents and large waves. So you got to be on the lookout for those swells on arrival. Usually they'll be talking about it. If there's a big one coming, it'll be all over the TV.
Right.
Because the surfers will be really excited about it. So there'll be a lot of interest in it. But to realize that too, our warnings and our advisories for high surf, they change. So for the North Shore, it's 15 feet for an advisory, the face height of the wave, and 25 for a warning. For the South Shore, it's 8 feet for an advisory and 15 feet for a warning. So the values are lower in part because of the way the reef structure is and the types of waves we get, and because there's a lot more people in the water in the South Shore, so the advisory criteria goes down. But one of the facts that we get from ocean safety officials is that more people die in waves that are 3 feet or less than anything else. Because
Why is that?
What happens is when the waves are big, most people who aren't into jumping into the big waves and surfing, bodyboarding, whatever the case may be, they see the waves and go, whoa, that looks dangerous.
Not going in.
Just a common sense and our gut feeling says, I don't want to go in there.
Okay.
But when the waves are 3 feet or less, most people think, I can handle that. But they can get into trouble. So you get a lot of people who aren't quite, maybe they're not good swimmers, maybe they're out of shape, and they feel like, hey, I can get out and surf that size and get themselves into trouble. Another place like Sandy Beach on the east side of Oahu, pounding shore break, right? It may only be 3 feet, but it's pounding right on that
And that could take you right out.
And so, so if you turn your back on it, you get in the wrong spot, you're going to get pile driven into that sand.
And you're under this current now,
Right, and so people need to realize that even waves of smaller size can do some significant damage to you.
Okay, and kind of makes me think of when we have like flash flooding that happens. People will say, don't cross a flow of running water because it may not be as harmless as you think it is. You know, it's pretty quick and it catches you off guard and you're down. So let's talk a little bit about flash flooding.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So what you're talking about there is it takes about 6 inches of water to knock an adult off their feet and wash them away. 6 inches. So if you're a child, it's even less.
Oh my goodness.
Right? It takes about a foot of water to move a car. It doesn't matter what size car. It could be 4-wheel drive. It could have a big rack on the back of the truck. It doesn't matter. A foot of water will move it. And then you're floating downstream. So it doesn't take much. And our flash flood season is typically during the winter months. We do get bouts of it during the summer. When we get more active systems, but generally when we get a cold front that approaches, comes from the west and northwest, and then kind of swings through. But it's a threat throughout the year as well.
Wow. Are there certain areas within the state or even on our island here on Oahu where flash flooding is higher, is more incidence of flash flooding than other areas?
It tends to be prone to areas that see the more frequent chances of seeing heavy rain. But because of the terrain of Hawaii in general, it's usually sharply cut. You get these stream channels, cutting through the Aina. So just about everywhere stands an equal chance of seeing it. If you're talking Oahu, a lot of times we're talking like Waikane, the windward side, they tend to flood fairly often. Up towards Princeville, the northern shore of Kauai, especially along the rivers up there, Hanalei River tends to flood rapidly. The eastern side of Maui or by Hana, in those areas they have channels that flood fairly frequently. And then the Big Island up at the Hamakua coast on the northeast side. So in general, a lot of times it's the windward sides of the island because they tend to see more precipitation more consistently. But when we have a cold front, it's pretty much equal chances. Wherever the rain is falling, you're going to see the chance of a flash flood.
Wow. So would it be a good idea if, say, you just moved into a neighborhood and you're not really sure, how the water's flowing or what's happening, when you have a heavy rain, just kind of look out and see how the water's rolling down your road or the driveway and coming into your yard. Just kind of pay attention to that. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, it's good to be observant of where the water moves. Like you said, hopefully it's not a big event because it may be flowing through your house, but you'll see where it goes. But watch for canals, look for stream channels near your property. And those are areas that will be prone to flooding, especially if the stream channel has a bend in it. Any type of sharp bend in a stream, the water comes down, tends to hit that bend and pile up before it goes around. So a lot of times it'll maybe pile up and then spread out from there. A lot of the streams that are in urban areas are channelized. So you get the channel has been carved out, so it'll be pretty much a straight shot. But if you're in rural areas, areas of the Big Island, and some other places where Molokai is the same thing, they have low water crossings. So the road just dips down into the stream bed and then comes out. So anytime there's water in that stream crossing, do not cross it anytime. Because a lot of people will drive right into it, and we've lost people who were killed because they drive in it at night. Maybe it's raining hard and they don't stop to look into that dip. Maybe they don't know it's there because they're not.
Or they think it's not that big of a thing, I can get right through it.
Right, and all it takes is just like you could stall out, the water can rise rapidly. Last week we had the storm over the Waikani
Yes,
area, right?
yes.
The water rose 7 feet in less than an hour.
I mean, they closed the roads and everything, but that's a common occurrence right in that area.
Right, and it's a very rapid rise. So it may not look like much, you're driving across it, all of a sudden it comes up and you could be washed away.
Wow. If you're crossing it, oh my gosh, you don't
big
stand
trouble.
much of a chance getting across.
Right.
So, okay, so if you're looking at your property and you're understanding, flash flooding, if you will, and you're thinking, okay, this may be an area that may be prone to flash flooding, you should start doing things now. Like if you have to re-landscape that area somehow, or put up barriers to prevent, maybe redirect the water.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can contact local officials,
Yes.
the emergency management, civil
Oh.
defense, and they may be able to give you some tips, and then maybe lead you into other people who can help kind of do the landscaping and find ways to do it. You want to, if it's been dry for a while and there's debris in the stream bed, one thing you can do is pull the debris out
That's another
on your
thing,
own
right.
and get it to recycled or wherever it goes. But get it out of the stream, because that debris can pile up, it becomes
Yes.
a little dam,
Yes.
and then you're even in more trouble.
And if it's in one of those larger streams, they can call to have somebody come out and maybe
Absolutely.
clear it, because you want to protect your property and your
Yes.
family as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, we've probably got about another minute and a half, Mike. Is there
Okay.
anything else that you want to get out to the public from NOAA or from the National Weather Service?
Well, I think from my perspective, I appreciate the opportunity to come on the show here with you. It's a wonderful experience, and I hope everyone takes safety and preparedness
Yes.
seriously. It's something that we don't think about a lot. Our lives are busy. We're active with our families, individual projects, with work, with school, whatever the case may be. Natural disasters are they're back there and they're
Right.
whispering at us, but we're not really thinking about them.
Right.
But we need to be proactive about getting prepared so that we're ready. So when something happens, we're not scrambling and running around. We're prepared. We don't
Good.
have to fear. We have what we need. We have a plan. We have a kit, and we're going to go where we need to go.
Good
If
point.
we don't prepare, then we're going to get caught off guard, and
Yes.
it could lead to harm to ourselves or our families or those around us.
Yes.
So I just want to encourage everyone to take preparedness seriously.
That is wonderful. So when they see the warnings come across our TV, is it a warning first and then a watch?
Usually a watch,
A watch
then
first?
a warning.
Okay. So when you see the watch, don't just go, oh, it's okay, I still have a little bit more time. I'll wait till the warning comes on. The watch is move.
Right. The watch is get your plans in motion, get everything prepared. A hurricane is 48 hours out. We'll do a watch.
Wow.
36 hours out is a warning.
That's
so by
not much
then,
time.
You got to be done.
Thank you so much for being here, Mike, and saving lives by all the information you've given. Thank you. Please send your comments to TBN, P.O. Box A, Santa Ana, California, 92711. You may also reach us at www.tbn.org. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining us.